Hello everyone, and welcome to Martin's Movie Corner, the show where we tell new movie reviews and give new movie takes in an old school kind of way. My name's Nathaniel Martin, and I'll be your host. Tonight, we will be discussing two incredible films that came out recently. One, Robert Eggers' latest film, The Lighthouse, starring both Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe as two Lighthouse attendees who, despite not really getting along, are able to bond over a nice drink. But things quickly go south as this suspenseful thriller of sorts kind of weasels its way in a very mysterious way. Another movie we will be discussing tonight is the Rudy Ray Moore biopicture starring Eddie Murphy, as well as produced by Eddie Murphy, Dolemite Is My Name. Now, both of these films are absolutely outstanding and will probably be on my top 10 film list of the year. I think they both serve great purposes and, well, let's start off with The Lighthouse.
Daddy! Let Neptune strike ye dead, Winslow! Hark!
All right, have it your way.
The Lighthouse is a very, very unique, once every few years kind of movie. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen a movie like this, and I don't think most audience members have. It feels very old school in a kind of way, shot in that old school 4:3 aspect ratio or something similar to it, and in black and white. Now, this might turn off a lot of mainstream audiences, but critics alike are raving for both Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe's performance, noting both of their performances as a career best. Now, Willem Dafoe is an iconic character actor who's been around for years. I don't know if this would quite go up there with his best roles of all time, but it's certainly up there. But for Robert Pattinson, I would say this may be his best performance to date. The Safdie brothers film, also distributed by A24, I think in 2017, just 2 years ago, called Good Time, may have a better performance through and through, but there's a few moments in this film where Robert Pattinson doesn't even look like Robert Pattinson. It really leaves audiences wondering, what's he going to bring to the table with Matt Reeves' upcoming film, The Batman? What The Lighthouse offers is a unique cinematic experience, one that you won't normally catch in theaters. The fact that it even was distributed in theaters, to me, is just a testament to how great the sound design is, how great the world that they build is, and the whole film takes place on one rock. It's a very grounded film with horror and suspense elements, and honestly, it takes you the whole movie to really figure out what's going on. Some would call it an overly ambiguous film, some would even call it an overly ambitious film, but what I really appreciated about The Lighthouse was that it treated its audience members like intelligent, civilized human beings. Instead of pandering and giving heavy-winded exposition, I don't think there's any dialogue for the first 15 to 20 minutes of the film. You get to learn about the characters through their actions, what they do, and when they do start talking, it doesn't dumb it down and have them speak like you or I. Instead, in The Lighthouse, Robert Eggers, and I believe co-written by his brother, go into the period dialect in a very sophisticated way where they use the language of the time through, I believe, other Lighthouse Keeper journals from real life. I believe the film is set in the 1890s, and really, there's not much else you can say about the almost Shakespearean meets Canadian meets Irish twang that these two lighthouse keepers have. They sound like seamen. They sound like pirates. And some people might be turned off by that. Me personally, I think it kind of helped and hurt the film. It really helped the film because it made it stand out even more than it already does. And both the actors just chew the dialogue so well. It feels like it's second nature to them, especially Willem Dafoe, who gives many a monologue in this dreary sailor talk kind of voice. And it could easily, with a worse director, with a worse script, turn into a hokey, cheesy, over-the-top performance, especially with Willem Dafoe, a character who can sometimes be a little cartoony in ways. But because of this film's excellent direction, excellent script, and just a brilliant tone and an overall outstanding voice, I do think Willem Dafoe gives an outstanding performance, and I expect Oscar nominations from this film. If not for the two great performances, perhaps from the screenplay itself, or maybe even the production design or the sound design, which all I thought were amazing. However, the dialogue is a bit of a detriment. In fact, there were many a scene in this movie where I wasn't quite sure what the characters were saying, mostly due to the incredible sound design. I mean, they're on a rock in the middle of a storm, and you can hear the constant droning of a lighthouse. And that replaces the score in a way. There isn't much music in the film. Instead, the droning, rotating sound of the lighthouse and the engine to propel it is really the only kind of music we hear. And it's very, very unique. I don't think too many films would make such bold choices, and I think they all paid off. My only critique about the film would be it's a little hard to understand every word that is spoken. And with a script this good, you really want to hear every line. So when this movie comes out, either on digital or some sort of streaming service, I'm definitely planning on watching it with subtitles. I do highly, highly, highly recommend the film. In fact, I beg you to watch the film. However, I wouldn't blame you if you wait for the comfort of being able to watch it in your own home. And honestly, with the visuals, they are outstanding. The lighting is fantastic. The composition, the way they kind of paint with light in a way is very, very old-fashioned. In a lot of ways, the movie feels like a product of the 1920s or the 1930s. That being said, I'd understand if you waited to watch it at home, just for the sheer fact of being able to understand what the characters are saying. The monologues go by quick, and they are very, very well written. That's all I can really say about The Lighthouse, and I highly, highly recommend the film. One of the greatest of the year so far. The other film we'll be discussing tonight is Dolemite Is My Name.
It's showtime, y'all. You love him and I love him. Put your hands together.
Dolemite is my name!
A bit of a return for Eddie Murphy, playing Rudy Ray Moore, a comic, an entertainer, and a filmmaker. This film's written by the same writers who brought us Ed Wood and many other great biopics about the entertainment industry. It's no wonder that this film was a success. It kind of crept up on me. I didn't really expect to see this really anywhere. I didn't see a trailer for it until maybe March or May this year. And surprisingly, it got distributed on Netflix. Now, I think we live in a very, very bold time where great cinema is coming straight to our televisions. You don't even have to go out to see it first. And I think that is a perfect way to distribute a film like Dolemite Is My Name. Very young audience members are not familiar with the Dolemite character that Rudy Ray Moore has brought to the screen and originally brought to the stage in his comedy acts. However, this film works totally perfectly fine without that explanation. In fact, my girlfriend, who I watched it with, had never even heard of the concept of Dolemite, had never seen any blaxploitation film for that matter, and still was in love with the world, was in love with the characters, and honestly, it's a true testament to movies about filmmaking. I think Rudy Ray Moore was definitely not the most apt filmmaker, but he knew what he wanted to make, and he also knew to lend those resources to other people. One of whom is Keegan-Michael Key, who you may know from Key and Peele. He plays Jerry, a local black activist and community theater director turned screenwriter who wants to bring a sort of sophisticated, real grit to the movie Dolemite. And as he learns working with Rudy Ray Moore, he's kind of going more for fart jokes than he is for highbrow cinema. But where I think this movie really succeeds is in how it treats its subject matter. Oftentimes, movies like these, whether it be Sweetback's Badass Revenge, which is a great movie by Martin Van Peebles, the son of Mario Van Peebles, who made the original Sweetback. They tell the story of how the movie was made, but they do so in a way that kind of just tells it how it is, like a documentary. But in this scene, there's true drama, there's true escalation, and there's a point in this movie where, man, you really don't know if Dolemite's going to be able to make this movie. This movie is also a lot stronger than other films in the genre, or the subgenre rather. films like The Disaster Artist, which come across as more of a comedy where they're just trying to recreate scenes from the original movie that they're telling the making of. This film definitely lands more along the lines of an Ed Wood, and I would highly recommend it as well. And the best part about my recommendation is you don't have to pay $20 to go see it. You don't have to even leave your house. You can watch the movie in your boxers for all you want. It is right on Netflix right now. You can watch it in your living room, on your laptop, on your phone, on the toilet, wherever you watch movies on Netflix. Definitely check out Dolemite Is My Name. I would recommend it for just about everyone. There's a little bit of graphic nudity, there's a little bit of inappropriate vulgar language, but it all comes from a good place. And Eddie Murphy definitely delivers in this film. He doesn't really hold back, and he kind of blends himself in a little bit with Rudy Ray Moore. And I think he did so in a very tasteful way, especially since it's been a few years since we've seen him on the big screen, or in this case, the small screen. I think this is a great comeback film for Eddie Murphy, and honestly, I think he could be a nomination this year for the Academy Awards. He brought a real human aspect to this larger-than-life character. And Wesley Snipes also makes a bit of a comeback in this film as D'Urville Martin, a great character actor turned director when Rudy Ray Moore presents him the opportunity to direct Dolemite. There's a great ensemble in this film with Craig T. Robinson, Bob Odenkirk, and even cameos from Chris Rock and Snoop Dogg. A lot of people who were touched by Rudy Ray Moore really came home to give a love letter to the exploitation films brought to you by a very, very doughy, vulgar comedian. I think that this film is incredibly heartwarming, but also a great look into what it's like to make movies. There are countless scenes in this film, and I think the one that stands out the most to me is when, after all the struggle, all the hardship, going over budget, having to risk his record deal, his comedy routine, having to sell the rights to it just to distribute and finish the film, and struggles to find a distributor, has to take it to one random theater and sells out, and it's a great hit. There is a scene where the movie finally gets made. It's finally getting distributed, and the critics review it. And normally in a movie like this, the characters would get, hurt by the critic reviews, or they would just turn a blind eye to them, or the film wouldn't even acknowledge it. But they read actual critic reviews of the film Dolemite, and Rudy Ray Moore, played by Eddie Murphy, finds the charm. The critic in the film says it's vulgar and crass, and nobody should see the movie. And Rudy Ray Moore knew that would get his audience there for sure. This has been Nathaniel R. Martin, and I hope you enjoyed the first of our show. If you really liked this episode and there's more movies you want to hear me discuss, I believe next week we may talk about a bit of a sleeper hit from South Korea, Parasite. What a year to own Netflix, am I right? We've got The Irishman coming out from acclaimed director, a legend of the industry, who believes that superhero movies are not cinema, Martin Scorsese. I'm absolutely stoked to see both of those films, and I hope you guys are excited to hear what I have to say. Thank you.